Hi everyone. Today we are going to be reviewing some of the art elements that are very important building blocks to creating drawings. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you some of these, I call them like the basic ingredients of how to make pictures, how to make artwork. So those are things that we've been working on in class, okay? So we are going to take a look today at line, shape, color, and pattern. So when we're creating artwork, think about illustrations that you've seen in stories or pictures that you've seen in books or magazines. They often start with something as simple as a line. We've talked about line in class, and we have all different types of lines. So a zigzag line could be like the scales or the spikes on the back of a dragon. A straight line can be used to start drawing windows or buildings. Wavy lines, you may show a ocean or a sea to show waves where a boat may be floating. So lines are a basic element of art. We also often use shape. So some of the basic shapes like circle, square, triangle, and rectangle are used all the time to create buildings. If you're drawing, let's say, remember our gingerbread house project, maybe you're drawing a house, you're going to start with a square or a rectangle. If you're drawing a flower, you may start with a circle in the center. We use basic shapes, and you see there's an oval here as well. We use basic shapes as a foundation for creating all sorts of drawings. Another element that we use all the time is color. Color is usually, a lot of us find the fun part of art, right? How are we going to add color? Are we going to add it with crayons or markers or colored pencils, or are we going to paint with color? But we like to add color to a lot of our artworks. So those are three very basic elements of art, those ingredients that we use all the time to make different kinds of pictures. When we take line, shape, and color, and we put them together in a repeating way, we create a pattern. So if we take circles and we repeat a circle and a circle and a circle and a circle, all of a sudden we've created a polka dot pattern. You may also look at the different colors shown here and the different thicknesses of these lines. We have a thick red line, and then a skinny blue, and a skinny white, and a skinny blue, and then a thick blue. We're creating a pattern of repeating lines and colors. So when we take those basic elements of art, line, shape, and color, and repeat them over and over, we create what are called patterns. For example, if you look at these pictures here, you see there's a yellow circle, and you see some short lines, some curved lines, a longer, thicker line, and then you see some repeating lines going around a curve here. If I took all of these parts and pieces and I decided to put them together, I can make a picture. So I've made a flower out of all of those basic elements of art: line, shape, color, and pattern. I've now created a picture. I've created a flower. So what we're going to do today is we are going to practice using line, shape, color, and pattern and create a flower picture. To do that, we're going to start off by creating some circles. And I just have a cup here. I have a glass. You can use a plastic cup. You can use anything that you have that you want to trace to get a perfect circle. I also have a little bottle cap, and I'm going to use that to make some smaller circles. A perfect circle is really hard to draw on our own without a tool. So these little tracers are great ways to create a perfect circle. Okay, I'm going to share my document camera and we'll get started with today's project. The first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to start with my pencil. I am going to work with a Sharpie today, and you can work with a marker or a black crayon or a black colored pencil. But I'm going to start with a pencil because I don't want to get Sharpie on my cup. And I'm going to trace my cup, and it may be hard for you to get all the way around, so you might have to move your hand around different sides of the cup, okay? So I have my first circle, and I'm going to start today with just 3 for this project. And you can start with 3 as well, but feel free to add as many as you like to create your flower garden. Okay, I'm going to start with these 3 circles, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and outline them with my Sharpie. And you can go ahead and grab your smaller circle, your smaller tracer, if you're going to use one. And I'm going to, and you can do a different pattern and a different design on each one. I'm going to trace around this cap, and this has little ridges on it, so it's not giving me a perfect line, but I can always trace over that and clean that up a little bit. I'm going to add that to one of them, and you don't have to add that to all 3 if you don't want to. I'm going to leave these 2 and create kind of a different design on those. And in this one, I'm going to start, and you can make any patterns you want for your flowers. I'm going to make a polka dot pattern. This kind of makes me think of seeds, right? Like a big sunflower would have little seeds, kind of representing that texture using a polka dot pattern. Okay, and then I want you to get creative. So this is going to be a little bit of work time, and I'm just going to work and give you some ideas, but you should be working at the same time as I'm drawing. Okay, so you go ahead and start working on yours, and you can look back to this if you want to look for some ideas. I'm creating a line pattern around this circle, which means it's a radial pattern because it's going around the circle. Now in this one, I think I'll do something a little bit different, and I'm going to start with just a dot in the middle. I'm going to make kind of that radial line pattern. And I think I'm going to make another circle. Now this one I'm just drawing on my own. I'm kind of trying to follow that same curve, trying to get pretty decent circle drawn. And then I think I'm going to come around with some more lines. You could do repeating triangles, repeating squares. You could do square, triangle, square, triangle. You can do different kinds of lines. So in this one, maybe I want to do some wavy lines, practicing our wavy lines. All the way around the circle. Okay, so once you have the design that you like around or inside each one of these circles, the next thing we want to add to our flowers is some sort of petals. Now you can see on this example, I've added some different styles of petals. And so you can add either kind of a more traditional style with a curved line going all the way around. You could add little teeny petals. You could do repetitions of small petals. Maybe you have some petals that are falling down off of the flower. So you can decide how you want to finish your flowers. So if I were going to add sort of that look where they're just coming down on one side, I might just add something like this along the bottom, and I'm going to leave the top plane. And I think this may be upside down for you. So there you go. It's a little tricky with the document camera. So now on the next flower, I might want to try to do a different type of petal. Maybe I want to do a zigzag line all the way around to create some petals. You can even add doing a triangle without a bottom. I can go in here and add some petals that look like they're behind the other ones, right? So now these petals look like they're kind of popping out from behind the others. And then I think on this one, I'll add some of those smaller petals using what's called a scalloped line. So when you have a line that has a little curve that comes down to a point over and over and over, this is called a scalloped line. And that would be a nice thing you could add, like if you were doing a mermaid tail, or maybe some tiles on a roof of a house, you could do a scalloped line. Here's how that line works again. Now you can add additional patterns, right? You're trying to make your best, most interesting artwork here. So you can add additional patterns even inside of the petals to make it even more interesting. So you can come into each petal design and add more patterning. Now, I'm just doing this all in black and white right now. I'm going to show you adding a little bit of color, but you can keep it black and white. You could add some color. And you could even do every single one of these petals with a different kind of pattern if you wanted to. All right, so right now my flowers are just kind of floating, right? They're just floating in the air. To make these connect to the ground, I need to add some stems. Now you could make stems that are straight, or you could make stems that are curvy. You could make a zigzag line for a stem. When we look at these flowers, we can see that these are not exactly realistic flowers, right? These are not the same as a flower that you would find out in your garden. We're making them more of a cartoon or imaginary, fun, creative flower design. So you can make your stems in the same way. And you can add some leaves. And you could give your leaves a pattern. Now, notice with this stem, I'm going to start this stem right here, and I'm going to color it in so that you can see it a little bit better. But this flower, I have to decide, does this flower go in front of this flower, or is this flower in the back? If this flower is in the back, I'm going to draw a little portion of my stem, and then I'm not going to see it, it's going to disappear, and then I'm going to continue it down here, showing that this stem is behind the first flower with the zigzag petals, okay? And I'm going to keep the video a little bit shorter, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you can go through and pause as you need to, pause the video and work as you need to, but you can add patterns to show leaf veining, right? Often the leaves have little veins on them, so you can add patterns like that. And I know my drawing is sideways. I have limited workspace here, okay? And you could even go in and add additional little patterns onto your petals, get very creative with this. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add some color. If you want to really sort of add a lot of detail to your drawing, you can add additional flowers that are not circular. So you can add some things coming up out of the ground that is not circular. So you can see here I have some different shapes coming up. I have some little kind of grassy sprouts. I have a flower here that's more of a teardrop shape with little particles floating off, little seeds blowing in the wind. So you can add any of those kind of details that you want just by drawing lines coming up from the ground. They can even go past other parts of the flowers and adding some more little details. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to add some color. So that was the other element of art that we're working on, is adding some color to our picture. So you can choose to use crayons. You could use markers if you like to work with markers, or if you prefer to paint today, you can use paint. You can also use a combination of crayons and paint. So we've done that before many times. What you will want to do is pick out your color scheme. I'm going to pick a few crayons that I know, a few colors that I want to work with. And I'm going to add some color to my picture using the crayons first. And I'm coloring quickly, but do your very best coloring, staying inside of your lines the best that you can. And if you drew a lot of your work with pencil, if you're going to paint, you really want to go over your pencil lines with a Sharpie or a black crayon. You don't want to color over anything with a black Crayola marker or any of your Crayola markers and then add water, because that's going to work like a watercolor paint. So if you do that, that's going to start, the colors will start to bleed. And I can show you that in a minute. It doesn't work well on this paper, but it is another option for adding color. Okay, so now you want to use your watercolor paints and you want to make sure that you get them nice and saturated. So just add a little bit of water to the paint palette. Now, if you're using yellow, you want to use that first before you get your water all dirty. Okay, so that you don't go back into the yellow and make that yellow palette really dirty. If you do use yellow, you can just go and rinse your brush whenever you need to. Okay, so remember, the watercolor spreads very easily with water. So you need to control, okay, how much spreading is going on with the amount of water that you're adding to your picture. Okay, so you can add water to the paper first. We've done that before. Or you can just add water to the paint and paint that way. Okay, so you might want to use a smaller size brush, especially if you have some smaller areas to paint. Another thing that you can do is, if you do not have watercolors, you can add some color just using a marker. And it doesn't work so great on my paper, but I know that it'll work better on your paper at home. If you add water to it, it will start to spread that color on your paper, just like it was a watercolor paint. Okay, so that's another option you have if you would like to paint, but you don't have paint at home. Okay, and here is another example with some different kinds of shapes. And I hope that you enjoy this project. It's a great way to review some of those basic elements